The message crossed the stars slower than fear, but faster than hope. It moved through silent space, carried by tight beams of data and quiet desperation. When it reached the core worlds of the Galactic Coalition, many already knew what it would say. Still, knowing did not soften the truth. The war was being lost. The Coalition had formed to prevent this exact moment. Dozens of species, each from gentle worlds, had joined together to protect trade routes, borders, and peace. Their planets had soft skies, low gravity, and few natural dangers. Their people were smart, careful, and trained for defense. They believed that cooperation would be enough. It was not. The enemy did not care about treaties or shared space. They came in numbers that blotted out stars. Their ships were crude but many. Their soldiers were bred for pressure and pain. Each battle drained the Coalition more than the last. Medical bays overflowed. Fleets pulled back again and again. Worlds near the front went silent. Commander Rin Sol stood alone in the strategy chamber, staring at a wide holodisplay. Stars blinked in soft blue. Red markers spread like a sickness. Every red point was a loss. A ship destroyed. A station abandoned. A world burning. Rin's people were not built for this. His bones were light. His muscles were thin. Even the armor he wore felt heavy on his frame. He had trained his whole life to command fleets, not to watch them fade away. Around him, advisors spoke in low voices. Their tones carried fear, even when their words tried to hide it. "We cannot hold the outer line," one said. "Our reserves are gone," said another. Rin raised a hand, and the room fell quiet. He took a slow breath, steadying himself. There was one option left. One choice that had been discussed and delayed, pushed aside again and again. Humanity. They were new to the wider galaxy. Their first contact had been tense but calm. They came from a heavy world, rich in storms, deep oceans, sharp mountains, and endless life that fought to survive. A death world by Coalition standards. Humans were smaller than some species, but dense. Their bones were thick, their muscles strong. Their planet had trained them from birth through pain, pressure, and constant danger. Gravity alone would crush most Coalition soldiers. Humans walked under it every day. Many in the Coalition feared them, not because humans were cruel, but because they were capable. Stories from early joint exercises spoke of humans running where others collapsed, fighting after wounds that should have ended them, smiling in places where fear ruled. Rin had read every report. He knew the cost of asking, but he also knew the cost of not asking. "Prepare the request," Rin said. The advisors looked at him, some with relief, others with worry. "We must be honest," Rin continued. "No pride. No soft words. Tell them the truth. Tell them we are breaking." The message was written with care. It described the enemy, the losses, and the conditions at the front. It warned of extreme danger. It listed expected casualties without hiding the numbers. It did not promise glory or reward. At the end, Rin added his own words. "We ask for aid, knowing the cost. If you refuse, we will understand." The message was sent. Then they waited. On Earth, the message arrived at a room filled with quiet screens and tired faces. Human leaders from military and civilian branches sat together, reading the same data Rin had seen. The silence stretched as numbers were reviewed and images played. Burning stations, shattered fleets, civilians fleeing through cold space. A man with short dark hair leaned forward, hands folded. His name was Jiho Kaid. He was a captain, pulled from field command for this meeting. His face showed little emotion, but his eyes were sharp. "They're not soldiers built for this," Jiho said at last. "No," replied Hanarive, standing beside him. She was younger, her voice calm and clear. "Their worlds never taught them to bleed and keep moving. Around the table, others nodded. Earth's history was long and violent. Humans had fought wars before they ever reached the stars. They had learned hard lessons through failure, loss, and survival. None of them wanted another war, but none of them feared one either. What are they asking for? One official asked. Reinforcements, Hana replied. Support units. Defensive fleets. Training help. Jiho exhaled slowly. That's not what they need. The room turned toward him. They need people who can hold the line when it breaks, he said. People who don't freeze when plans fail. Another officer spoke. You're suggesting Deathworlder deployment? Yes, the word hung in the air. Deathworlder units were not used lightly. They were trained for the worst environments, worst fights, and worst odds. They were expensive. They suffered losses. But they won battles others could not. They warned us about casualties, Hana said. Jiho nodded. They were honest. That matters. There was no cheering. No loud approval. Only steady agreement. The decision was made. The reply sent back to the coalition was short. Request received. Reinforcements approved. When Rinsol received the response, he felt something he had not felt in many cycles. Relief. But it did not last long. Human ships arrived faster than expected. They entered the system without ceremony, their drives burning hot and bright. Coalition sensors struggled to track them at first. The ships were dense with mass and layered armor. They did not look elegant. They looked ready. Docking bays filled with observers as the first human vessel opened its doors. The air shifted. Humans stepped out without hesitation. No environmental shields. No delay. Gravity pressed down hard, enough to make coalition soldiers sway. The humans barely noticed. Jiho Cade led the group. His boots struck the deck with solid weight. He looked around, taking in the thin frames and wide eyes of the waiting forces. Behind him came Hana Reeve, scanning data already flowing across a wrist display. Dai Solon followed, broad-shouldered and quiet, carrying gear that would have taken 2 coalition troops to lift. Yuna Park moved with purpose, her medical kit secured at her side. Eyes already searching for the wounded. Whispers spread. They're not wearing support rigs. They're breathing raw air. Are they smiling? Jiho stopped in front of Commander Rinsol. He gave a simple nod. You called. Jiho said. Rine straightened, forcing himself to stand tall despite the weight around him. We did, and you came. We did, Jiho replied. Show us where it hurts. Around them, the war continued to burn. Enemy fleets moved closer. Lines weakened by the hour. But for the first time since the red markers began to spread, the coalition felt something change. Not hope. Resolve. Humanity had arrived, not to save the galaxy with words, but to stand where others fell and refuse to move. The humans moved through the docking bays, as if the metal and gravity were made for them. Their steps were measured, heavy, and confident. Coalition soldiers watched from behind barriers, whispering among themselves. They had never seen beings move with such ease, under conditions that pressed down on their bodies, like a storm. Captain Jiho Cade stopped at the center of the bay and looked around. His eyes were calm, taking in every detail. He noted the narrow corridors, the low ceilings, and the placement of weapons racks. He understood the difference between observing a battlefield and preparing to fight on one. Hana Reeve followed him closely, scanning the data flowing across her portable interface. She ran calculations in her head and compared them to reports from the front lines. Every number, every signal, confirmed what they had already known. The coalition's defenses were failing. The enemy was relentless and adaptive. The humans had to be fast, precise, and merciless in their efficiency. Dai Solon carried heavy packs of equipment with ease. His frame was massive, built for the strain of endless combat. Weapons, explosives, and survival gear hung across his body, but he moved without fatigue. He was the muscle of the team, and his presence alone changed the atmosphere in the docking bay. Where Coalition soldiers hesitated, he moved forward without question. Una Park was already assessing the injured Coalition personnel. Her medical kit was compact but comprehensive, containing instruments that were strange to the aliens, but effective beyond their understanding. She knelt beside a soldier with a twisted leg, her hands gentle but firm as she worked. Her calm presence reassured those around her. Even the soldiers who had feared the humans felt safer under her care. Rin Sol approached Geo, his posture stiff with a mixture of respect and awe. "Your reputation precedes you," he said, "but I must warn you. The front lines are in chaos. Many of our units are broken. Many have retreated or fallen. The enemy pushes harder every hour." Jiho nodded without a word. Words had little meaning here. Actions mattered. "Show us where it hurts," he said simply. Rin led them to a fast shuttle, one that would take them close to the battlefield. As the shuttle rose, the view outside revealed the devastation. Ships drifted lifelessly in orbit. Stations were scorched black, their once pristine surfaces scarred by fire and energy blasts. In the distance, the enemy fleet moved like a dark cloud, dense and threatening. The shuttle touched down on a planet at the edge of the conflict. The air was thick, slightly toxic, and far heavier than what humans were used to. Most Coalition soldiers had to wear environmental suits to survive, but the humans stepped out without hesitation. Gravity pulled, air burned, and the terrain was uneven. Yet they moved as if nothing could slow them. Rin followed them carefully, observing. He had expected strength, but what he saw surpassed even the most optimistic predictions. The humans adjusted their footing, tested the soil, and surveyed the horizon with an ease that unsettled him. Their confidence was not arrogance. It was experience. They had lived through conditions that would have broken others. Jiho led the way to a nearby encampment, where the Coalition forces had tried to regroup. The camp was in disarray. Tents had collapsed. Supplies were scattered. Exhausted soldiers slumped against equipment, their morale at rock bottom. The humans assessed the situation in silence, their expressions unreadable, but focused. Hana knelt beside a communications console. Within moments, she had rerouted signals, restored partial networks, and provided the soldiers with real-time information on enemy movements. The difference was immediate. Coalition units began to coordinate again, their panic replaced by cautious hope. They moved through the encampment, distributing heavy weapons and ammunition. He organized squads into defensive positions, moving with a strength and decisiveness that made hesitation impossible. Soldiers who had doubted the humans found themselves following his instructions without question. His presence inspired a new kind of courage. Una attended to the wounded, triaging injuries with speed and efficiency. She treated not only physical wounds, but also the mental shock that came from seeing friends die and stations fall. Her words were simple, direct, and calming. She reminded the soldiers that survival was still possible, that there was a plan, and that help had arrived. The humans worked as one unit, each understanding the others without speaking. Jiho's eyes scanned the horizon. Enemy patrols were moving closer, probing the defenses. They had been confident, believing the weakened Coalition lines would crumble easily. They had not expected this. Hana transmitted updates to Rin, showing him enemy movements, supply lines, and potential weak points. Together, the humans and the remaining Coalition officers developed a plan. It was audacious, perhaps even reckless, but it leveraged the humans' unique strengths and the Coalition's knowledge of the terrain. Night fell quickly. The darkness brought more than quiet. It brought fear. Alien eyes, not adapted to the shadows, darted nervously. Coalition forces huddled together, waiting for the next attack. Humans moved as if night were a light. Their senses adapted, their movements smooth and deliberate. Where others feared the unknown, they thrived. When the first enemy patrol arrived, it was met with an unexpected resistance. Jiho led the counterattack. His team moved like a single organism, precise and unrelenting. They struck with brute force, breaking lines and creating openings. Hana guided the coalition units to flank the enemy, using data and quick thinking. Yuna moved through the chaos, pulling the injured to safety, keeping morale high, and ensuring no life was wasted unnecessarily. The enemy was taken by surprise. Their scouts had reported a weak coalition presence. Instead, they found relentless humans striking with strength and strategy beyond their calculations. Panic spread among their ranks. What should have been a simple skirmish became a costly engagement. Iron Soul watched from a distance, his heart pounding. The humans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like survivors, like predators who had adapted to impossible odds. His people had been trained for combat, but they were fragile by comparison. He could not help but feel awe and fear at the same time. Hours passed. The humans maintained pressure, pushing the enemy back while keeping coalition forces organized. Their endurance was remarkable. Wounds, fatigue, and exhaustion barely slowed them. They seemed to draw strength from hardship, from the challenge itself. By dawn, the battlefield had changed. The enemy was retreating. Coalition lines held. Casualties were lower than expected, and the survivors were emboldened. Soldiers who had been on the verge of despair now looked to the humans with a mixture of respect and gratitude. Jiho surveyed the aftermath, his expression unreadable. Hana and Day checked supplies, ensuring the units could hold their positions. Yuna continued her work, tending to the remaining wounded. Rin approached cautiously. "I underestimated you," he admitted quietly. Jiho nodded. "We do not underestimate the situation. We adapt." Rin did not fully understand the humans yet. He knew they had changed the course of this battle, but the depth of their capability remained a mystery. What he did know was simple. The humans had arrived, and with them came a force the galaxy had not seen before. Coalition soldiers began to recover their confidence. Where fear had reigned, determination now took root. Humans did not merely fight. They inspired. They reminded everyone that survival was not only possible, but achievable with courage, skill, and resolve. As the humans prepared for the next move, Rin realized that this was only the beginning. Their presence would reshape not just the battlefield, but the understanding of what was possible in war. The galaxy had called for reinforcements, and it had received more than it had asked for. It had received humanity, and humanity carried death and life in equal measure. The sky above the battlefield was dark, heavy with smoke and the dim light of distant fires. The enemy had regrouped, their numbers vast, and their machines of war advanced without hesitation. Coalition soldiers felt the weight of inevitability pressing down, but the humans moved forward with calm determination. Undeterred by the chaos surrounding them, Captain Jiho Cade surveyed the terrain. Jagged rocks and scorched earth created natural obstacles, but to him they were tools. Every rise, every valley, every burned-out structure was an opportunity to channel the enemy into places where they would be vulnerable. His mind worked quickly, considering angles, distances, and the strengths of his team. Hana Reeve, at his side, processed incoming signals, relaying crucial information to both humans and coalition soldiers. Day Salin led a small squad ahead, testing the enemy lines. His movements were precise, his strength unmatched. He struck quickly and decisively, using heavy weapons to break enemy formations. The enemy, though fierce, was not ready for humans who combined intelligence with raw power. Each clash left them confused and fearful. They had never fought opponents who could endure so much and still advance. Relentlessly, Una Park moved through the injured and scared coalition soldiers, calming them, patching wounds, and restoring hope. Her presence reminded everyone that survival was possible. She was not just a medic. She was a symbol of care amid carnage. Soldiers who had frozen under fear now found courage to stand again. Inspired by her steady hands and calm voice, the humans did not attack recklessly. They used the terrain, the shadows, and the enemy's overconfidence against them. Jiho coordinated movements with silent signals, nods, and quick gestures. His team anticipated each other's actions without needing words. Coalition soldiers tried to keep up, learning from their methods and following instructions with renewed determination. The enemy underestimated the humans. They thought that the Deathworlders were like other soldiers, strong but not invincible. But humans moved through fire, smoke, and rubble as if it were a simple walk. They adapted instantly when plans failed and recovered quickly from injuries that would have ended other warriors. Every advance they made disrupted enemy lines and morale. Coalition units, once disorganized and terrified, started to regain order. Inspired by the humans' fearlessness, they pushed forward, closing gaps and protecting weak points. Rin Sol watched from a command post, realizing that the human approach was changing the battle's flow. He could see the difference between fighting for survival and fighting to survive with control. Enemy forces tried to regroup. They sent wave after wave, hoping to overwhelm the human-led lines. Each wave met calculated resistance. Dai Shaolin smashed through enemy ranks with heavy fire, while Hana directed flanking maneuvers that trapped attackers. Jiho led from the front, his presence a rallying point. Una kept everyone alive, moving tirelessly among the chaos, her hands steady and sure. Hours turned into a day. Sunlight barely broke through the thick smoke, casting pale light over the battlefield. The humans did not stop. They pressed the enemy, forcing retreats where only chaos had been expected. Coalition soldiers who had once doubted them now followed their lead, learning courage and strategy by watching their actions. At one point, Jiho paused atop a ridge, his eyes scanning for signs of further enemy reinforcement. Hana joined him, her data streams projecting on a portable display. "They're sending more units from the south," she said. "They've learned to respect our positions, but they're still coming." Jiho considered the options. Retreat was not possible. The coalition lines could not hold without human support. He made a decision. We hit them before they organize. We take the fight to them. The humans moved swiftly, leading coalition forces into a calculated strike. Their attack was precise, exploiting every weakness Hana had identified. Day's brute force broke through the central line, while Jiho led smaller teams around the flanks. Una moved with them, treating the wounded immediately and keeping morale high. Coalition soldiers, inspired and guided, found themselves performing beyond their usual capabilities. The enemy's confusion grew. They had expected simple targets, not humans who could endure more, think faster, and strike harder. Panic began to ripple through their ranks. Commands were ignored, formations collapsed, and retreat orders came too late to save many. Jiho's team continued to push. Every step, every strike, every calculation was designed to exploit the enemy's mistakes and weaknesses. Hana relayed enemy movements, coordinating attacks that seemed impossible but worked seamlessly. Day's strength and aggression tore through obstacles. Una's care ensured that the injured could return to the fight whenever possible. As the day wore on, the humans' influence on the battle became undeniable. Coalition soldiers began to believe they could hold the line. Fear was replaced with confidence, and despair turned to resolve. Even the smallest units began to perform maneuvers that would have been unthinkable hours before. Rin Sol, observing from above, felt a sense of awe. He had known the humans were strong, But witnessing them in action changed his perception entirely. They were not just soldiers. They were survivors, shaped by a world that demanded endurance, cunning, and resilience. Their presence had transformed the battlefield, turning potential defeat into hard-won advantage. Night fell again, bringing a temporary lull. The battlefield was scarred, the air thick with smoke and dust, but the humans had held every position. They were not resting. They were preparing for the next wave, scanning, assessing, and planning. Their vigilance was unending, their determination unbreakable. Ji-ho stood at the center of the encampment, looking over his team. "We cannot stop," he said. "We move forward. We push until this ends." Hana nodded, analyzing data streams and projecting probable enemy movements. They checked weapons and ammunition, ensuring readiness. Yuna continued her rounds, tending to the injured and the weary. Coalition soldiers gathered around, taking cues from the humans, understanding through observation what had been impossible to teach. The enemy would come again. They always did. But the humans had shown what could be done when courage, skill, and experience combined. They had turned fear into action, weakness into opportunity, and hopelessness into determination. The battle was far from over, but the humans had changed its course. Their methods, endurance, and unwavering will had not only held the line, but had begun to reclaim what was lost. The coalition had called for reinforcements, and it had received more than mere soldiers. It had received humanity, and humanity brought with it the ability to turn despair into survival, chaos into order, and loss into victory. The morning light was pale and cold, filtering through the smoke that still hung over the battlefield. The enemy had regrouped, bringing reinforcements, but their movements were cautious. The humans had shown them that underestimating opponents could be deadly. Their approach now was careful, almost hesitant. Captain Ji-ho Cade stood on a small rise, surveying the terrain. His eyes moved constantly, taking in the positions of both enemy and coalition units. Hana Reeve beside him relayed information from her portable console, displaying probable enemy movements and weak points. Every detail mattered. Every misstep could cost lives, but the humans had learned to adapt faster than anyone expected. Dae Solin moved ahead with a small team, setting up forward positions. His strength was unmatched, but his movements were deliberate. He placed traps, barriers, and heavy weapons with precision, anticipating enemy attacks. Coalition soldiers watched, learning how to prepare for combat beyond their standard training. They followed instructions quickly, inspired by Dae's confidence and Ji-ho's calm command. Yuna Park attended to the wounded. The injured were many, and their morale was fragile. Her hands were steady, her voice gentle, as she reassured soldiers and healed their wounds. She treated humans and aliens alike, showing compassion that went beyond species. Her presence reminded everyone that they could survive this, that humanity was not only about strength, but also about care. The first enemy wave came mid-morning. They moved cautiously, their heavy weapons aimed and ready. But they had already been observed and analyzed. Ji-ho gave a quick hand signal, and the humans struck. They smashed through the front lines, creating chaos. Hana directed coalition squads to flank the enemy, using terrain and shadows to their advantage. Yuna moved among the injured, keeping them alive and calm. Coalition soldiers found themselves acting with new courage, following the humans' lead without hesitation. The enemy faltered. They had not expected such resistance, nor such organized aggression. Their formations broke under pressure, their morale collapsing. Panic spread among their troops. They had always relied on numbers to overwhelm weaker species, but humans did not break. They adapted, fought back, and turned every situation to their advantage. Ryan Sol observed the engagement from a command post. He had expected humans to be strong, but what he saw surpassed his understanding. They were relentless, precise, and unafraid. Their presence reshaped the battle, turning potential losses into hard-won gains. The coalition soldiers, inspired and guided, began to fight with determination they had not known before. The battle stretched through the day. Humans moved with tireless energy, striking at the enemy's weak points, reinforcing the coalition's vulnerable areas, and keeping the injured alive. Jiho led small teams into the thickest parts of the fighting. His strategy focused on using every advantage. Hana's guidance kept attacks coordinated and effective. Day's brute force cleared paths and broke resistance. Yuna's care ensured survival, keeping the line strong. Enemy reinforcements arrived from multiple directions, trying to turn the tide. But the humans anticipated them. They adapted instantly, redistributing forces, reorganizing coalition units, and countering each new threat with efficiency. Each attack was met with calculated resistance. Each maneuver was designed to exploit weaknesses. The enemy began to retreat, not entirely defeated, but shaken and disorganized. By evening, the battlefield was scarred, smoke rising from wreckage and fires still burning. The humans, despite exhaustion, maintained vigilance. They did not rest fully, knowing the enemy could strike again. Coalition soldiers, previously broken and fearful, now held positions confidently, guided by human leadership and inspired by their resilience. Jiho surveyed the aftermath, his expression calm but focused. Hana relayed updated enemy positions and probable movements. Day checked weapons, ensuring readiness. Yuna moved among the soldiers, tending to wounds and offering reassurance. The humans had changed not just the battle, but the soldiers themselves. Fear had been replaced by determination, hesitation by action, and despair by courage. Ri and approached Jiho quietly. Your actions have changed the course of this battle, he admitted. I had doubts, but I see now that your presence is more than reinforcements. You are the reason we can stand. Jiho nodded. We do not fight to impress, Commander. We fight to survive and to give others a chance. We adapt. We endure. We keep moving. Coalition soldiers, once skeptical and timid, now looked to the humans with respect and trust. Their confidence grew, and with it, their effectiveness. They learned quickly, observing the humans' methods, understanding strategy through action, and gaining courage from the example set before them. The enemy, seeing repeated failures, began retreating in disarray. Signals of surrender and emergency requests for backup spread through their communications. They had underestimated the humans, assuming fear and exhaustion would do the work. They had been wrong. Humanity had turned the tables, using courage, strength, and adaptability to dominate where others had faltered. As night fell, the battlefield quieted. The humans did not celebrate. Their work was not done. They checked positions, reinforced weak points, and prepared for any counterattack. Coalition soldiers rested, bolstered by newfound confidence and the knowledge that they had allies who could endure what others could not. Jiho gathered his team, his voice low but firm. We hold tonight, and we fight tomorrow. This is not over. But we have shown them that humans are not like other soldiers. We do not stop. We do not break. We endure. Hana nodded, adjusting data feeds and mapping out the next moves. Dai checked weapons and supplies, ready for the next battle. Yuna continued her work, tending to the injured and weary. Every human action inspired the coalition forces to rise beyond their previous limits. Rinsol looked at the humans, understanding finally what the galaxy had gained by calling on them. They were not just reinforcements. They were a force of survival, an embodiment of resilience, and a reminder that the impossible could be achieved. Where fear had ruled, humanity brought courage. Where chaos had reigned, humanity brought order. Where despair threatened, humanity brought hope. The night was still and tense, but the coalition forces now stood ready. The humans had shown them what was possible when skill, experience, and determination came together. The battle had shifted. The enemy had been forced to respect the human strength and adaptability. The galaxy would not forget the presence of these Deathworlders, who fought not only with strength, but with endurance, intelligence, and heart. Dawn broke over the battlefield, painting the sky with pale gold and gray. The fires of yesterday still smoked, and the ground was scarred with the marks of combat. Yet the coalition forces now held the line. Where panic and chaos had ruled, there was now order and purpose. The humans had ensured it. Captain Jiho Cade walked among the troops, observing their positions and listening to their reports. Coalition soldiers, once hesitant and fearful, now carried themselves with confidence. Their eyes followed Jiho and his team, watching, learning, and finding courage in every action. Hannah Reeve moved alongside him, analyzing incoming data and relaying vital information. Each decision was precise, each movement calculated, and each strike deliberate. Day Salin checked the defensive positions, ensuring that weapons were ready and obstacles were set to slow any enemy advance. His presence alone inspired respect. Soldiers who had doubted themselves now felt capable of holding the line. Una Park moved from soldier to soldier, treating wounds and offering words of reassurance. Her calm energy spread through the ranks, a steady heartbeat amid the chaos. Enemy forces were visible again on the horizon, approaching cautiously after suffering heavy losses in previous engagements. They had learned to fear the humans, and that fear affected their coordination. They hesitated, uncertain how to engage units that could endure what others could not. Coalition forces watched, holding positions with steady hands. Guided by the example of the humans, Jiho signaled a small team forward. They moved with speed and purpose, reconnoitering the terrain, finding weak points in the approaching enemy formations, and returning with information. Hana coordinated movements, ensuring that coalition units could respond effectively. Day prepared to strike, ready to smash enemy lines at the exact moment. Una ensured the injured were secure, and morale remained strong. The first clash began mid-morning. The enemy advanced, their heavy machines and troops pressing forward. But humans were ready. Jiho led the counterattack, moving through smoke and debris with calm precision. Dai smashed through enemy ranks with brute strength, creating openings for coalition squads to advance. Hana directed flanking attacks, turning the enemy's numbers against them. Una moved among the wounded, keeping them alive and calm, her presence reinforcing the will to fight. Coalition soldiers watched, learning from the humans. Every action demonstrated courage, adaptation, and efficiency. The humans fought not only with strength, but with strategy. They understood the battlefield, anticipated enemy moves, and adjusted constantly. Where the coalition had faltered, humans excelled. Hours passed, and the enemy continued to push. They sent wave after wave, hoping to overwhelm the line. Each wave met calculated resistance, each maneuver countered by human strategy. Coalition units, guided and inspired, fought with newfound skill and confidence. They adapted to the chaos, following the example set by the Deathworlders. Jiho moved through the battlefield, observing, leading, and adjusting tactics. Hana coordinated the attacks with constant updates, ensuring that coalition forces could maximize their effectiveness. They struck with devastating power, breaking enemy formations. Una tended to every injured soldier she could reach, keeping hope alive. The human team worked as one, a seamless unit whose strength and experience transformed the battle. By evening, the enemy had begun to retreat in disarray. Their morale was broken, their formations scattered, and their advances stopped. The humans had not only held the line, but had forced the enemy to reconsider further attacks. Coalition soldiers, once uncertain, now stood ready, capable, and confident. The battlefield was theirs. Rin's soul walked among the surviving troops, observing the results of the humans' intervention. He had witnessed extraordinary skill, courage, and endurance. He had seen how humans inspired others to fight beyond their limits. He understood finally that they were not just reinforcements, but a decisive factor in the survival of the coalition. Ji-ho gathered his team at the center of the battlefield. His expression was calm, his eyes sharp. "This is the result of adaptation and persistence," he said. "We fight until the end, and we survive because we do not give up. Every challenge teaches us, every wound strengthens us, and every victory prepares us for the next fight." Hannah adjusted her data feeds, highlighting areas that needed attention and potential threats that remained. Day checked weapons, ensuring readiness for any counterattack. Yuna continued her rounds, tending to the remaining wounded and exhausted soldiers. Coalition units observed and learned, understanding that the human strength was not only physical but mental and strategic. As the sun set, the battlefield grew quiet. Fires burned low, smoke drifted lazily into the sky, and the dead and wounded were attended to. Humans did not celebrate. Their work was not complete. They reinforced positions, ensured the safety of all survivors, and prepared for possible enemy retaliation. They understood that survival depended not on glory, but on endurance, planning, and care for every member of their unit. Rin approached Ji-ho quietly. "You have done more than fight. You have changed the course of this war," he said. "Your people are remarkable." Ji-ho shook his head. "We are survivors, Commander. We fight because we must. We endure because that is what we know. Others may falter, but we keep moving. That is what makes the difference." The coalition soldiers, now standing tall and confident, looked on. They had witnessed the human strength, endurance, and adaptability. They had learned courage, strategy, and determination by watching and following. Fear had been replaced with resolve. Despair had been replaced with hope. Chaos had been replaced with order. The enemy would continue to challenge them. That was certain. But humanity had shown what could be done in the face of impossible odds. They had taken the battle and turned it into a lesson for the galaxy. Every move, every strategy, every act of courage demonstrated that humans could survive, adapt, and triumph where others might fail. As night fully descended, the humans took positions around the battlefield. Coalition soldiers rested, but remained vigilant, ready to follow the humans' lead at a moment's notice. Ji-ho, Hana, Day, and Yuna watched over them, their presence a reassurance that the line would hold. The galaxy had asked for reinforcements, expecting help. Instead, it had received Deathworlders humans, shaped by survival, endurance, and relentless courage. They brought with them not only strength and skill, but a lesson. Survival was possible against any odds when the will was unbroken and the mind and body adapted to the challenge. The story of this battle would spread across the coalition. It would be told of how humans stood where others faltered, how they inspired fear in their enemies and courage in their allies, and how they turned despair into victory. Humanity had arrived, and with it came not just reinforcements, but a force that redefined what it meant to survive and to fight.